Okay, we are here to talk about The Bear season 3, the entire season that dropped on June 26th. This series, created and co-written by Christopher Storer, has a number of other writers and directors for the season, including some of the cast, which worked on some very interesting episodes of this season. Picking up almost immediately after the end of season 2, after a successful friends and family service, except for Carmy. The Bear is open for business, but things are far from smooth. Carmy and Richie still yelling at each other every day. Carmy wants to change the menu with each service. Sydney is contemplating a partnership agreement with the restaurant. Marcus and the whole staff are grieving after his mother did pass away, and the restaurant seems to be hemorrhaging money in its first few weeks for a variety of reasons. Uncle Cicero and his friend, the computer, not happy about that. Carmy's afraid to contact Claire after his outburst that ended season 2, and it's affecting his performance as a chef, as a boss, as someone who has several different relationships. We see a lot of snapshots of Carmy's past in the season, mentor chefs, people he's worked with in the past. It's clear he's becoming a lot more like David Fields, the Joel McHale character, every single day that passes by. Sydney is struggling with this version of Carmy, is strongly considering an offer to be chef de cuisine at a new restaurant that Adam Shapiro is going to open after they find out Ever is suddenly closing its doors. A surprise heads up that the restaurant's going to be reviewed sends everyone into even more of a panic because the reviewer came without them knowing. Uncle Cicero takes this as an opportunity to tell Carmy he has an ultimatum. He's going to cut the string if they get a poor review. Sugar goes into labor while on a supply run, has to rely on her mom, Donna, to get through everything. These two ultimately bond and begin to repair what's been a fractured relationship for a long time. And at the funeral service dinner for the restaurant Ever, many chefs, all the people that Carmy's worked with in the past, talk about their hatred for dysfunctional kitchens. Sydney, who is there, starts to really question whether she should stay with Carmy. And this decision back and forth gives her a panic attack later that night. At the same dinner, Carmy confronts David Fields, tells him he destroyed the person that he was, while Fields says, well, it actually made you a great chef. Chef Terry tells Carmy she closed Ever because she wanted to have more of a life while she still could. In the season, with the review from the Chicago Tribune coming in, which seems to be very mixed, some positive, some negative. So we're left with what's going to happen after this review has come in. So there's 10 episodes in about a minute.
Yep.
Boy, there's a lot of stuff here, and I think you and I have digested as much as we could, as fast as we could. Where should we start?
And let's start with the first episode
Great.
briefly. You know, an interesting episode, really kind of an experimental sort of episode. My first comment to you watching it was that it felt to me like an extended music video for a track off of Nine Inch Nails' Ghost album.
Yeah.
And I was actually pretty precisely correct on that. If people aren't aware, the song is Together from Ghost 5. Actually, right? It's in the credits, music by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. So you get that vibe. I don't know. Have you ever listened to this stuff? Let's start there, just briefly, almost as an aside. Any fanship for the Nine Inch Nails or
Yeah, I would
the
say a
Ghost
lot.
stuff?
A lot of my Nine Inch Nails fandom sort of might have stayed in the 90s and early 2000s. I haven't listened to a lot in the past 20 or so years, but I mean, Nine Inch Nails was a part of my youth, part of growing up. So it just sort
Yeah,
of resonates in everything. And so to see it, I think in the piece that I've written that's going to go live later today, talk about it's almost being a musical interlude between the two seasons, right? It's really, to use a phrase that comes up this season, it's really haunting. It's really beautiful. It's really a nice way it looks back and it looks forward.
yeah,
I mean, kind of, you mentioned that this is a tough episode if you're going to just write something about this first episode. But what a nice way to sort of segue between the two seasons. I just found to be pretty brilliant.
yeah. Agreed. I mean, and I have seen that some people have written on it, and so part of what Ryan's referencing is. For a minute, I thought, like, hey, maybe I'll jump in and just write on the first episode. Then I watched it. I was like, well, I don't know how to write on this. Um, because it's all just a montage of memory and trauma and I thought it was very effective. I think the musical choice was quite good. um I guess I am trying to plug Ghosts if people haven't listened to it.
Yeah.
Like, if you enjoyed the music in this episode, you got a lot of it out there that Nine Inch Nails put out with Ghost 1 through 4 in 2008, and then 5 and 6 came out in 2020. I mean, so we're talking like what? I don't know, 6 hours of like kind of
Yeah.
minimalistic Nine Inch Nails um, tracks. But the one they chose in particular, I do think is quite haunting and fitting for what's going on in this episode, which is, as you say, I think pulling on the past and looking into the future and getting at Carmi's anxieties.
Hmm.
And I don't know. Anything else you want to say? I mean, as you say,
Yeah,
it
just
does kind of seg between the seasons.
it's pretty. Another reason I thought it was brilliant was that we're going to see Carmi struggle with what type of person he wants to become in this season. And this, uh, obviously, there's actually, I think, more looking back than there is sort of the tomorrow part of the episode tomorrow,
Yeah.
where we see a lot of Carmi's past, right? Who he's worked with, how he's been mentored, the way they treated him, things that he's learned. And so it sort of sets us up for all of this, all this nurture that builds into who Carmi is going to try to become this season. And like, does he want to be more like these chefs that have really taken this sort of peaceful mentorship towards him, or more like the Joel McHale character who's just standing over him, telling he's worthless, telling him he's basically made nachos, right? All these different things that are leading to this tension between how he's now running the bear.
Right. And I feel like he's kind of pulling all of this together. The episode title tomorrow, I guess, is how he is viewing the future,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That this is culminating in his decision to be who he is in this season. Um, because if you recall, even in season two, he wasn't interested in getting a Michelin star, right?
right, right.
That's not the point. That's not what we're doing, you know. And that somehow through all of this, he's coming to the decision to be even more perfectionist. That's what we have to do. We have to make this absolutely great. We've got to go for the Michelin star. Um, I found the episode to just be really effective. It's hard to get at in words, but I definitely think that it worked.
Yeah.
I also don't know that this is like a healthy response on his part to, he have the past trauma because there's also stuff. Michael's death is in there. Michael's funeral, which Carney missed, is
Yes,
in there.
yes,
Of course, continuing throughout the season, kind of stuff with Claire is in there, right? He's messed up his relationship with Claire. He got himself locked in the walk-in. He wasn't there for his staff during that friends and family night. Basically, all of that in many ways it seems like his response is, well, we're gonna try to like push all that down and put it under pressure and make a diamond. Surely that's the healthy psychological response, right?
you have not yet read because I have just actually not pressed submit on the piece I've written, but there is a lot talking about pressure, about what it builds, about what it takes, and sort of how the Army feels that in this season. And yeah, it's almost like this. I don't know if this is like an addiction cycle or he's obviously he's going. We see him go to an Al-Anon meeting at least once in this season where all of these things from his past find themselves bubbling up to where he gets to this point and it just sort of is this chaos. And then he'll get like in the episode tomorrow, he'll apologize to Sydney and say, I'm not going to be like that. I'm not going to make these mistakes again. Praises her for her leadership. But then it's just like the cycle keeps continuing with him. All of this stuff from the past, Mikey, David Fields, all the other things just can't keep from coming up while he's running this place. And I think that's what's putting Sydney in such a tough spot throughout the season.
Right. Yeah. So I think that then immediately kind of opens up to the season as a whole. So many things are unresolved. Um, he never does talk to Claire.
Yeah.
We were talking about this last week. Is there a chance that they reconcile and so on? Maybe there still is, but how much time do you think passed here? About 2 months over the course of the season?
Yeah, so when we have indoors, when we flash through dates on the order sheets, we see about 4 or 5 weeks go by. Certainly, there's been some more time go through as they lead up to the last episode. So I would say probably a couple months.
Yeah, maybe 6 weeks. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
also thinking about Natalie's pregnancy, where I
She's
feel like something was said
She said
towards the
she
end
was
of
seven
seasons.
months and then
Yeah.
she has the baby. So yeah.
So somewhere around there. So Kirby does not talk to Claire. Claire kind of haunts the season in a certain way. Um, then equally as you mentioned, Sydney is faced with this decision. She's presented with that partnership agreement at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
She still hasn't signed it by the end of the season. She's gotten the competing offer from Adam Shapiro.
Yeah.
None of this is resolved. And it's also not resolved what exactly that review says. Right at the end, as you say, we get some kind of flashes of it seems mixed. It's not just a positive review, to be sure.
Yeah.
The threat from Uncle Jimmy, what exactly does that mean? Maybe I'm running through almost too many things at once, but just to note, like there's actually a lot of things that cut through the entire season, but then aren't resolved.
Yeah, I actually have a whole section on the thing that we're pushing later today that talks about unresolved questions, things that have not sort of been sorted out. Maybe, I think the tension of the review and Sid's decision is meant to build towards, okay, we're gonna find those things out in the next season, but to go through a whole season and not have Claire and Carmi even say one word to each other, were you expecting that? We kind of anticipated, oh, well, this will happen towards the end, but to have really nothing surprised me a bit. I was going to ask if you felt the same to you.
Yeah. Um, at one level, I think it worked.
Hmm.
And at another, or maybe it's the same level, I think it makes sense that Carmi would not reach out to her still over this period of time. Yes, she's being mentioned. Yes, she's haunting
Yeah.
his mind in a certain way. Um, it also makes sense, if you recall, however long ago it was when we saw the news that they were filming season 3 and season 4 back to back or at the same time or
Yeah.
whatever. Then okay, I mean, because it does feel almost like half of a season. Do you need to put to be continued at the end?
Yeah. That
They're,
that
they're
really
signposting the idea that it's like half of a season.
that I won't say it bothered me, but it was okay. This is one season broken into two pieces. This is basically what you're doing. This is, we're gonna have a mid-season hiatus, the long extended final Breaking Bad season, or just something like that is kind of what you can compare it to. That, yeah, it's all one story, but this nature of we went back to back with this. And I presume we're going to be waiting a year to see season 4. Just left some big, big things on the table for us to be thinking about in between now and then.
Yeah, and I do think it works, and even works to say this is a season, and then next season will be another season. But they're clearly signposting. I was a little surprised it said to be continued. Like if we
Yeah.
know there's going to be more show coming on,
Yeah.
Um, but we were talking about Claire. What I didn't feel like worked terribly well, and this actually relates to my kind of one thing in this season that didn't quite work for me terribly well,
Hmm.
was the stuff with the facts in relation to Claire, and actually the stuff with them kind of more generally just didn't really work terribly well for me this season. Thoughts on that?
So I thought about the facts when you're bringing up Claire in particular because my theory is, Carmi is in such a place of struggle this season, such a place of tension, such a place of not knowing what he wants to be or how he wants to do things, that he never finds sort of what he's looking for. And when the facts go to the hospital and tell Claire, literally, you're the piece, that's why Carmen and Claire can't come together because he simply just does not have that right now, right? That Claire sort of represents this thing that Carmen's looking for, and he has to determine for himself whether or not he wants to have it. So that's sort of one thing about the facts and Claire, whether they were the right messengers of that, whatever. We know that they're friends. I, I enjoyed the facts of this season and sort of their the banter and the interaction and the conversation. It almost seemed like they were there to make people or to make whomever needs to realize, yes, we still have to consider this a comedy, right?
This is the thing. Like I felt like they were there for comic relief,
Yeah.
fine, but it felt a little bit to me like it was we got to shoehorn in some comic relief. This can't be so heavy all the time, you
Yeah.
know. Let's have this whole thing with the buffing of the floor and there's John Cena, right? That they did as a cameo.
Yes, John Cena shows up as brother Sam, who's introduces the idea of the haunting that we see throughout the whole season. And yeah, we see him for a few minutes and then no more after that.
I just I didn't feel like I didn't feel like I had a good purpose. I understand the purpose was comedic relief, but it just felt more like a distraction, or maybe it didn't quite feel like it fit in as seamlessly as some of the stuff with facts in the earlier seasons.
It was
Um,
all what the facts always did. Now, of course, there was one fact in season one, two facts in season two, now three facts in season three. It was always in service to what they were trying to do at the restaurant. And there's some of that. This is where they're trying and failing to fix a light or trying to buff the floor. But yeah, to send facts to the hospital, to have this conversation outside the beef where the facts and their three best friends, I guess, come and talk about haunting for 10 minutes. Some of that just seemed sort of disconnect from the entire story. But with Matthew Matheson sort of not just on the rise in terms of his level in the show, but also serving as executive producer this season and actually completely taking over one or two of the episodes, it's not really a surprise to me that we saw a lot more facts.
yeah, it's a very minor criticism. It
Yeah.
was just like of everything in this season, that was the thing that didn't quite work for me. Um, I guess because I wanted to be more involved in the running of the restaurant in a certain way or something. I mean, like the one moment that really did work for me was when he is instructed to pour the broth in front of the customers, and he just goes and pours the broth and then brings the food back into the kitchen. Like that moment worked,
Yes,
but some of
that's
this other stuff just felt a bit
more of
kind of
that. Yeah.
extraneous.
More
Yeah.
of that stuff would be great. Yeah.
Um, anyway, that very minor thing. And, I mean, with them going to the hospital to talk to Claire, it's like obviously that's not going to work. And I think even they're smart enough to realize that.
Yeah.
Claire almost does. Claire doesn't even need to say that Carmi has to talk to her himself, because obviously the only way they could possibly, reconcile would be for Carmi to talk to her. No, not
Yeah.
for Neil Faxon to go
Yeah.
talk to her. So
There's nothing the facts need to do here. There's nothing that Claire necessarily needs to do here. This is all on Carmi, but Carmi he is struggling this season.
yeah, so I mean, um, I guess my next note would be about the finale and the style of that.
Hmm.
Stylistically, the question I have for you. Um, in that last episode, it's the funeral forever. We get a lot of chefs monologuing,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of stuff like this going on. Um, did it start feeling to you at all that you were watching Top Chef or something?
Okay.
Like, it started feeling a bit like a reality show to me.
I'm glad you said this because this was one of my very, very minor complaints about the season as well. I mean, this finale needs to hit and it needs to hit hard. It needs to bring the things you want to a resolution. This finale to me, and some of them were better than others, but showed why actors act and other people are not acting in television shows, right? Because some of these chefs are getting up there and doing their recited lines and just trying their best to deliver the right words and don't really seem like it almost took me out of the episode a little bit, right?
Yeah,
When they're, as you said, when they're monologuing, when they're giving their experiences, some of them were better than others, but man, we spent a lot of time with them in that last episode. And I understand that they're meant to be there to help Sid see that, what, actually the best chefs don't like dysfunctional kitchens. But that much of it, man, it was almost took me out. I think we could have been better serviced by other things in the finale than that much.
yeah, interesting. I mean, I think I agree, but it just also got me thinking, what was the intention, and to what
Yeah.
degree was this actually the intention for it to feel like it felt. Um, Overall, I think the finale did work
Yeah.
pretty well, but yeah, maybe that could have been a little bit less. In contrast, he has his confrontation with Joel McHale's character David.
Yes.
I don't know, thoughts about that? It just
Um,
you're welcome.
yeah, you're welcome. It just I don't know that I would have expected anything different out of that character. I would have been pretty unhappy if like he had softened
Right.
or oh because we don't work together now we'll be all buddy buddy, stuff like that. The just sort of the juxtaposition of that conversation paired with the Chef Terry conversation right after that. Carmen sort of does both of these things. Talk about that a lot in what I've written here, but um, sort of serves as the two paths that Carmi has in front of him, right? Which one does he want to be? Which one does he want to do? One person's saying this is what you need to do to be great. One person is saying this is what you need to do to have a life. Um, and I was glad that he had that confrontation. I'm glad that Carmen at least had the gall to go stand up to him. But for him to be sort of shocked that that's how he was, and no, I mean that's clearly who this guy is.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if you've known guys like this. We've had this before about what they've worked in restaurants. My recollection is not so much.
No, I've not. I've only my only job in food service was at an ice cream place, not in a restaurant.
Right. Yeah, I worked in a couple restaurants when I was younger. There is an archetype, you know, of the head chef as asshole,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and to some extent it's necessary, I think,
yeah,
but the difficulty is how much separation is there? So I remember having this experience with the chef at one place I worked, then outside of work. And it wasn't like he was an entirely different person. And
yeah,
it wasn't like he was entirely all of a sudden kind and,
yeah,
cool guy or whatever, but he was a human being. Whereas like there's something almost inhuman about how he operated in the kitchen. And so I feel like Joel McHale's character is I relate it to that experience. It's a certain
yeah,
version of that. And it got me thinking about how for this guy, what he says is him being friendly,
yeah, yeah,
you know, him saying, "You're welcome.
yeah, exactly.
I helped to make you as good as you are."
I
And he
I did
actually
I did
does
my job
compliment
with you.
Carney in
Yeah,
that conversation.
exactly. To say you were very good when you came to me. You were great. You were excellent when you left. I did. There's no doubt I did the right thing with you while you were with me. Because clearly in his mind, you can think about nothing else about being an elite chef when you want to be an elite chef. Um, the rest of the people in that in that restaurant don't necessarily seem to think that. But you know,
Well, it gets to a question that's broader than being a chef, too. What
yeah,
is the appropriate style of training, of coaching? You can think about sports, for
yep,
example, what is a head coach like or whatever, And kind of one school that is the right way to do it is to really be a hard ass and hold the
mhm,
standard. And if
yep,
you're not up to this standard of excellence, you fail, right? No A minuses, right? It's just A pluses or Fs, right? Like
yeah,
get to the
exactly.
A plus or you're out. Um, and maybe there's something to that. In contrast, there's the approach that is more, I don't know, supple or nuanced or meeting people where they are or more human in a certain way. And how do you
Yeah,
view that, right? I mean, I
yeah,
take it someone like David, Joe McHale's character, would view anything less than his approach as inviting sloppiness, you know,
exactly.
and he
Yeah,
doesn't think you can do it any other way. Hopefully he's wrong about that, speaking for myself, but
yeah.
you know, I think
It
that's the
does
kind of
it does
question.
speak a lot to me in terms of the power of someone like that, where we saw him with David Fields, the Joel McHale character. We saw him with, I think I counted at least four other chefs who were, it looks like, very thoughtful, caring mentors. Let me, almost, make your hands do what my hands are doing. Just very service oriented, and for the power of how that one can influence or affect him even more than the others who were doing things the quote unquote right way with him. But it's become a combination of the influence of that one chef plus Carmi's just unrelenting drive to success that's taken over more than what those other guys and girls were able to do with him.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I think, of course, it also relates to his family history.
Yeah,
Again, going back to episode one, that's part of what's so great about it and the show is how those themes are resonating with one another.
yeah.
It's that's the whole story. We need all of that. We do get also in episode one, we were talking about last week, whether we would see some of these actors again.
Hmm.
And a lot of them we do see in episode one, just like in the montage. Um,
Yeah,
we got more Olivia Colman than I would have ever imagined. I mean, of course, doing it through the fact that Terry has decided to close her restaurant. That's a big part of the season.
yeah,
That makes sense. That was part of my question last week: is how much would make sense. Some of the others are kind of only there in the montage in episode one.
yeah. I was not concerned, but maybe a bit thoughtful that what we saw in episode one, okay, well, that sort of has satisfied people's desire to see these characters again, and we don't need to show them again later in the season. But as you said, a lot of Olivia Colman, a lot of Will Poulter, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Jamie Lee Curtis.
Well, one episode's
Um,
worth.
yeah, a whole episode's worth. Um, decent amount of time for a few other, characters that we see, John Mulaney and others, and then even enough time to introduce more cameos into the world here with John Cena, with Josh Hartnett, all of these chefs. I don't know if I'm missing any of the big ones here, but it just, yeah, more and more characters being added to this universe.
Yeah. I don't know how much we want to say about Frank. There's so many things we haven't hit on, Ryan. And I mean, we're going to talk more next week, and that's good because
Yeah.
it's starting to get to the point of like, oh man, we haven't really talked about Richie. We haven't really talked about Marcus. We've barely
Yeah.
talked about Natalie. Um, so yeah, we kind of have to make some decisions here about what we're doing today and what we're going to do in the future. But um,
Why don't we spend a little bit of time maybe on if we say Carmi, Sid, and Richie are the main characters, let's sort of
okay,
focus in on them, because I would like to talk about Sid's decision and how it's impacting her. Um, I want to ask what is the thing that you feel is holding Sid onto Carmi? Because the other offer is run your own kitchen, more money, um, presumably better benefits, better environment, better culture. What's Sydney holding on to? We see her see this review of the beef on her refrigerator right before she has this panic attack at the very end. Um, is this like, are you that beholden to what that was, that you just don't want to leave it, or do you trust Carmi that much that you don't want to leave him? What's keeping her from going to this other place?
well, I mean, I think it's not just Carmi. It's I mean it is. Let's start there. That's how you phrase the question, right? Insofar as she already looked up to him before they met.
Mm-hmm.
He's given her this opportunity. In starting the bear, there's a meaningful sense in which this is something we're doing together. Now, there are
Yeah.
problems with this, and I'll recognize those a little bit more as we move forward, right? But there's that sentiment, I think. But then also, I think for Sydney, look, it's not just Carmi, it's also Tina, it's also Marcus, it's also Richie.
Yeah.
It's a group, right? And so, um, to decide to leave the bear and go do something else when also the bear is almost not fully actualized yet, So have I given this the proper chance? Have I put the proper effort into it? Would I be abandoning, again,
Yeah.
not just Carmi, but the team?
Yeah.
And I think the problem is on the other side that even though she's got this partnership paperwork,
Mhm.
particularly here in season 3, it doesn't feel like she's Carmi's partner. It feels like he's taken everything over. And I don't know. I mean, the thing I kept thinking throughout the season was that Sydney needs to confront him directly on that question.
I
Like,
kept waiting
hey,
for that same thing. Yep.
you want me to sign this partnership paperwork?
Yeah.
Are we really partners in doing this? Because it doesn't feel like it.
Every action that Carmi takes is unilateral. Everything that he does is without consultation of Sydney. Everything from the menu to the star, to I mean, there's just countless things that they do this season that does not consult her. And it just that just doesn't, and that just maybe just adds more to me thinking, well, yeah, I love these people, but this is not what I signed up for, I guess. And maybe she won't know until she does have that confrontation with him. But it just doesn't seem like it's what Carmi said it was going to be.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's part of where you think about where we live, leave Sydney, as you mentioned, when she's kind of having a panic attack, or
Hmm.
if that's the appropriate way to put it, or whatever. Recall in the season 2 finale, she was puking in the alley.
Yeah.
The anxiety and all of that. I mean, I think part of it is also, look, what I'm trying to say is, I think she knows that's the conversation that she has to have with Carmi,
Yeah.
but she's also, I don't know if afraid is the right word, but you know what I mean.
It's almost like
It,
which conversation is going to be harder, confronting him about the way he's running things or telling him that she's leaving.
or
She's
just
going to have
leave.
to,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, I mean, it is like, there are people out there who, ship Carmi and Sid, and I
Yep.
don't get that at all.
Yep.
But
Yep.
their relationship is meaningful and deep, right? That's not the point. It's just it's not romantic. I don't think it's
Right.
romantic, and that wouldn't make
Right.
sense. But still, the kind of structures of relationships can be analogous anyway. And I think that's the kind of situation that Sid's in with Carmi. It's like if you're in a dysfunctional relationship and trying to decide whether we need to have a serious conversation about making this work together,
Yeah.
or just break up with them, just dump them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because you've already determined that you're not going to be able to make it good and functional, and you have to
Yeah.
just get out of it. And I think that's the kind of situation that she finds herself in.
Yeah. She's in a tough, I mean, a very, very tough place. I don't know that I expected we would get a decision by the end of the season. It was pretty emotional way to end it for her, in this one, to say working so hard, trying to do so much, and to be around those people that she loves, but to have that wash over her, how miserable this is making her, this decision.
Yeah. And thinking about the structure of the show, we've talked before, last week at least, about whether we think there's going to be more than 4 seasons.
Hmm.
We're not so sure.
Yeah.
Thinking about season 3 and the amount of time that passes or doesn't pass, it's not a ton of time. We said maybe 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. And thinking about the unresolved questions we're left with, which is basically like all of the questions.
Yeah.
I have this feeling that the structure is going to be that all of those questions get resolved at the end of season 4.
The end of
What do you
season
think?
4. Hmm.
Like, I don't think they're going to be resolved at the beginning of season 4. I think that they're going to be resolved at the end of season 4, and that might be the whole show. It might be series over.
Yeah, the only one that might think I almost see Claire as like the catalyst to a lot of these other things being solved. So like, what if Claire and Carmen work things out? That brings them some kind of peace, which makes them become some kind of person, which leads to a more of an environment that. So what if that's earlier on, and that leads to a lot of things happening to resolve some of this stuff? That might be the only one that I could see um, happening somewhat sooner. But I'm fully prepared to be wrong about that.
Yeah, I mean, I am too, for what it's
Yeah,
worth. Like, I was relatively surprised by the structure of season three in a certain way. So who knows? They various ways that they could go here. They could resolve some of the stuff very early on, you know. I
yeah,
just got to thinking about it, you know, and this includes the whole thing with Uncle Jimmy and his ultimatum with the review and whatever he says when he gets into the car with the computer, there's something that's gone unsaid that we also don't know.
yeah, yeah. I'm not sure
Um,
about that. Yeah.
but in the background of that, my recollection is that there was a period of time previously mentioned that was more like 18 months.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I think that, yeah, there was an 18 month to pay it back, but also the amount of money discussed in season two was, to my recollection, much less than what he says in episode nine when he says he's $850,000 into this restaurant. And so I think he's much more in than he thought he was going to be in season two.
Mm-hmm.
And the computer is telling him, we're just losing money hand over fist. So he's got to say, all right, this has got to start the upward trajectory or we got to get out.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
But
my
so,
that's
so
my
I,
read
yeah,
on it anyways, why the timeline may have changed.
right. Okay, that makes sense. But still, I could see it's going to come to a head with this review, but not entirely if it is kind of a mixed review.
Yeah.
So you're still more in the space of, hey, big things have to change, and this restaurant has to start becoming way more profitable soon, or I'm pulling the plug, as opposed to what he says about, you know, if it's a bad review, I'm going to have to pull the plug. I think to
Yeah.
some extent he was floating that as kind of an excuse,
Yeah.
where maybe the real story is he can't afford it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know Cicero's, financial portfolio, but $850,000 in when I think it was 500K that he was going to be in in season two over 18 months. Now we're 2 months, 3 months in and 850K. I mean, he just doesn't see the pattern that he's liking here.
Yeah, right. I'm saying like maybe what the computer isn't saying because they both know it in the car is that how is this Rose at risk of being in big trouble himself if he
Yeah.
keeps
Yeah.
kind of sinking money into this restaurant. So I don't know. Anyway, that's my speculation
Yeah.
that somehow all of this actually won't get resolved until the end of season four. And I kicked that off. We were talking about Sid, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and in part it's because even though this season did span maybe a couple of months, it felt like it very easily, if they decided to go a different way, they could have gotten a whole season out of like a week.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
know, so I'm not saying that it's a massive amount of narrative time that passes in season four, even,
Yeah.
but I could see the show kind of slowly working its way such that after the next 5 hours, that's when you're getting resolution to what Sid decides to do, whatever resolution we get with Claire, which could go either way,
Yeah.
whatever resolution we get with regard to the restaurant of the bear itself, which is also at stake. Um, we'll see. I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to season four. You said it'd
Oh, yeah.
probably be in about a year.
Yeah, I think it'll be about a year. You and I heard something interesting in this press conference that we were at virtually where someone asked them, is this true? Did you guys film this back to back, season three or four? And they said, we did something like that, or we did some parts of it, yes. And I just found that interesting. It's like, what are we hiding here? I guess maybe they have more to do or more to wrap up, but
It was kind of a weird answer, but I mean, I found myself wondering if it's look, it was reported in this sort of way, like
yeah,
they're filming season three and season four back to back.
yes.
I know enough about how things are made to know that that's not what you would do. It wouldn't be back to back, it would be at the same time,
Yeah, yeah,
right? We're filming all of the scenes at the same time for these two seasons because what they'll do is they'll say, okay, this is the period of time we're spending on the set that is the kitchen of the bear,
right.
right? And they'll film all the scenes out of order for all the stuff. And this is how things generally go, from how I
Yeah,
understand how things are made. So I don't know if that was part of the coyness
yeah,
or what. I really don't know. I did think that was a little bit weird in terms of how they responded to that.
yeah, yeah. I completely agree. It, I don't think we'll see any variation. I think we'll get this fourth season next summer. And it was, yeah, very much this is going to be a cliffhanger ending to the season. I've got 4 or 5 here things on my piece that I call unfinished plates, questions, big questions that they left unanswered that we're going to have to wait another year to see.
Maybe that's also part of what was on their mind when someone asked that during that virtual press conference, is that they knew it is kind of half a season, that it ends with the to be continued.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think you very well could be right about that, but um, yeah, just a lot left on the table. No pun intended.
Absolutely. Well, we said we were going to talk about Richie. Uh, you said main characters, and I realized that also feels like it should kind of include Marcus.
Uh, yeah,
Um,
I thought you were about to say sugar, so we're gonna have to just draw the line somewhere and
we
pick up.
have to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah,
Here's what I'm thinking. So we have both, in terms of standout episodes, put pins in napkins and ice chips.
yeah, yeah,
So we'll talk about those more directly on their own. And that gives us Tina and that gives us sugar.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, let's try to briefly, we can try to bring in some things, there about Richie and Marcus also, but briefly on those two. With Richie, outside of the restaurant, you've got the situation with his ex-wife getting married to Josh Hartnett.
Yep,
Frank, everyone loves Frank. Oh, Mulder. And she wants him to come to the wedding and all of that.
yeah,
Um, with Marcus, the big thing is that his mother did die,
yeah.
and
You and I
but
talked. You and I
talk
talked.
about his reaction to that a little bit.
Yeah, you and I talked before this season about this being a very interesting question heading into season 3. Being there for friends and family night. Now we now have confirmation when his mom died. Would he see this as, oh my gosh, in the frame of every second counts? Was he missing out on seconds with his mom that he could have spent with her in her last minutes? Or, so is the restaurant this place that makes him think of that? Or is the restaurant the place of comfort now for him as he's grieving and mourning, going through all this? Well, it's clear now that it's the latter. It is, his mom says, this is the place that she would have wanted me to be. This is quote, what's up now for him. And I wrote this as well, that one of the most powerful lines of the entire season is at the very end of season 2 when he says, take us there, Bear, right? Just, I need this. I've gone through all this. This is what I need, but we need you to do it. So I thought that that was something that was wrapped up very well, just sort of what his story has been and what he now is going to do going forward. However, however, in my unanswered questions here, one of the ones that I said is I am distraught. We did not get to see the sleight of hand violet dessert. I'm
Yeah,
really upset that we didn't get to see that, and we better see that in season 4.
still working on it. So
Yeah,
put a lot of work. So I
a
believe what
a
you're
lot of
referring
magic
to.
YouTube videos.
I think you just said season two, and you meant episode two of season three.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
just to clarify for people listening, when you had that conversation between Marcus and Carney, which I thought was great.
yeah,
You have these moments in this show. Carney says, hey, my advice is actually grapple with
Mhm.
your grief, you know. And Marcus says, that what you did? No.
No, laughing at it. No. Yeah.
Don't do what I did. Um, I'm thinking about that theme of grief in the show, and one of the things I got to thinking about is how it cuts across almost everything, including the Richie stuff. If you
Yeah.
think about it, not as grief in relation to death, but grief in relation to the death of his marriage.
Yeah.
Um, you see him taking off his wedding ring in this season.
Yes. Yep.
Um,
First time. Yep.
so there's that question of moving beyond that loss, wherever that new future is,
Yep.
and then culminating in the death of Ever, the restaurant,
Yeah.
another funeral. And man, when I saw that episode description, I was like, "What are you doing?"
Exactly.
Like,
That's exactly what I thought too. No, no, not who now? Yeah, I gotta go two funerals this season. Oh my gosh.
yeah, it's like just looking at the titles, someone's going to die. Well, okay, the
Yeah.
someone's a restaurant, so not as big of a spoiler as it could have been, I suppose. But um, so where are we going with all of that? I guess I think that Carmi is the main character when it comes down to it. His
Mhm.
story is central, and so that continues to strike me as the big question, almost like the biggest question whenever we're reaching the end of the series is
Yeah.
where does Carmi land in terms of his working through
Yeah.
of trauma and grief and all the rest. But yeah, we didn't get the pilot dessert
Yeah.
half a
I, I,
season.
we better get it. I mean, as you said, he's watching the videos, he's learning magic, he's seeing how to adopt it into a dessert. It's his. I mean, we had a whole episode called Violet, and he's creating a Violet dessert. We need to see it.
Yeah, we do. I also did really appreciate when the computer is questioning Marcus to Natalie. You come for
If you
Marcus.
if you touch Marcus, I will literally murder you in this restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. All right, noted. Ibrahim gets some help at the window. The part with the beef sandwich is actually profitable, I guess.
Yes. So, do you know who this guy is who comes and works with Ibrahim?
Uh,
So there's a guy, Chris, who this says like an old friend. He's in that first episode and comes back. And there's a guy in a
yeah.
hat. The guy in the hat is Paulie James, the owner of Mr. Beef in
Oh,
Chicago.
wow. Okay.
So he's the guy who runs the restaurant that first one was based off of. As I was researching who the chef cameos were, his name popped up, and I was like, oh, well, that's really interesting. So he's the owner of Mr. Beef.
Very cool. They got
Yeah.
that in there. Very cool. So we'll see, man. I don't know. Maybe Carmi can be convinced to buy cheaper butter. Um,
Yes. Less butter, less microgreens. Don't touch Marcus. That's the resolution.
yeah. Yeah. So, okay. What else we want to hit on? I think that along the way, we basically decided what we'd already kind of decided. We want to take more time and give more space to napkins and also
Mhm.
to ice chips.
Yeah, I definitely
Um,
think we should do that. We should focus on those two. That'll give us some good sugar and Tina content. Maybe a little bit about we've talked some predictions about where we might go from here, but just maybe we could do some thoughts on that. And yeah, if we are, I'm in the process of rewatching it. So if anything else stands out in terms of episodes, we could hit on those. Doors is an interesting episode because it's so chaotic. It's cut so roughly and so disorienting. It's an interesting episode to talk about, and we could just briefly, next time talk on that one as well.
okay, so I think we've been going for almost 90 minutes overall, which is going to, put even the bear section close to an hour at this point. So let's call it a day, but we're going to spend at least one more week talking about the bear. So at least one more podcast episode where we're talking about the bear. We'll talk a bit off air about exactly how we want to approach this and what kind of content might ultimately be available for people. But hopefully you've all enjoyed listening along here to us talking about season 3 as a whole. If you like the podcast, please do leave a good rating, review, give a thumbs up on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out tvobsessive.com. As Ryan's mentioned, he'll have an article on the whole season of The Bear coming shortly. It'll probably be published before this podcast, actually.
Mhm.
And probably some other stuff. Also, you can check out the site in general. And I hope that you'll do that. Follow us on social media and so on. And yeah, we'll see you next week. We'll talk about the bear some more.
All right, looking forward to talking more about it.